Well, you've just been captured and now you're a prisoner of war, or you're being detained. What do? Let's talk about it on the Counselor's Corner.
Call on, call on, call on, Thomas Mengesha. He will fight for your rights with all of his might. He's Mengesha.
Hello, I'm Captain Tom Mengesha, retired United States Army, as well as former adjutant for Base Support Battalion North in Camp Buehring in Kuwait. And what I'd like to do is talk about what you should do if you become a prisoner of war or detained. And I will give you 5 tips to keep in mind. So make sure you stay tuned and listen to everything and find and learn the 5 tips of what to do to make your captivity as pleasant as possible. United States Military Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct is the legal guide for behavior of military members who are captured by hostile forces. If you are considering joining the military, you will be required to memorize verbatim during your time in boot camp or basic training, service academy, ROTC, or officer candidate school as part or any initial military training. The Code of Conduct in 6 brief articles addresses those situations and decision areas that to some degree all military personnel could encounter. It includes basic information useful to U.S. POWs in their efforts to survive honorably while resisting their captors' efforts to exploit them to the advantage of the enemy's cause and their own disadvantages. Such survival and resistance require varying degrees of knowledge of the meaning of the articles or the 6 articles of the Code of Conduct. Now, Article 1, I am an American fighting in the forces which guard my country and our way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. Now, by way of explanation, Article 1 of the Code of Conduct applies to all service members at all times. A member of the armed forces has a duty to support the U.S. interests and oppose U.S. enemies regardless of the circumstances, whether located in combat environment or in captivity. Medical personnel and chaplains are obligated to abide by the provisions of the Code of Conduct. However, their special retained status under the Geneva Conventions grant them some flexibilities in its implementation. Now, what military personnel need to know? Now, past experience of captured Americans reveals that honorable survival in captivity requires that service members possess a high degree of dedication and motivation. Maintaining these qualities requires knowledge of and a strong belief in the following, and that is the advantages of American democratic institutions and concepts, love, faith in the United States, and the conviction of the U.S. cause is just, faith in, and loyalty to fellow POWs. Now, while I was never a prisoner of war, I was detained during wartime. And I can tell you that that is a very scary time, and you have to draw on your training to help give you strength and your faith to help give you strength through this time. Now, possessing the dedication and motivation, such beliefs and trust foster and enable POWs to survive long and stressful periods of captivity and return to their country and families honorably with self-esteem intact. Under the Geneva Conventions, medical personnel are exclusively engaged in the medical service of the armed forces, and chaplains who fall into the hands of the enemy are retained personnel and are not POWs. Now, that sounds wonderful to say, but whether you're retained, detained, as I was during wartime, or an actual POW, that is still a very scary and traumatic period in one's life. Now, the remaining articles of the Code of Conduct. Article 2, I will never surrender of my own free will. If I am command, I will never surrender the members of my command while they still have the means to resist. Now, what exactly does that mean? Now, members of the military are not to surrender voluntarily. individually or as a group, when isolated and no longer able to fight the enemy or defend themselves, it is their duty to evade capture and rejoin the nearest friendly force. Now, Article 3, if I am captured, I will continue to resist by all means available. I will make every effort to escape and to aid others to escape. I will accept neither parole nor special favors from the enemy. Now, what does that actually mean, you might want to say? Well, that's a good question. The misfortune of capture does not lessen the duty of a member of the armed forces to continue resisting enemy exploitation by all means available. Now, contrary to the Geneva Conventions, enemies who U.S. forces have engaged in since 1949 have mistreated prisoners while in captivity. Let's talk about Article 4. If I become a prisoner of war, I will keep faith with my fellow prisoners. I will give no information or take part in any action which might be harmful to my comrades. If I am senior, I will take command. If not, I will obey the lawful orders of those appointed over me, and I will back them up in every way. So by way of explanation, being a POW, communicating and keeping the morale as high as possible with your fellow captivities is essential to your survival. You are still in the military and the chain of command with a strong leader that will save you and your fellow prisoners. Now, keeping your morale high is important. I remember when I was detained during wartime, my fellow detainer and I would always try to find humor in our situation. And what I found was that certainly lessened the stress and anxiety that I was feeling and placed in isolation even for a period of time. Now, Article 5, when questioned, should I become a prisoner of war, I am required to give name, rank, service number, and date of birth. I will evade answering further questions to the utmost of my ability. I will make no oral or written statements disloyal to my country and its allies or harmful to their cause. Now, let's talk about that. What exactly does that mean? When questioned, a POW is required by the Geneva Conventions and the Code of Conduct to only give the name, rank, service number, and date of birth. This communication is for accountability purposes, as well as having a guideline for evading being used as enemy propaganda, allowing the prisoner some flexibility when torture or other illegal mistreatment or harsh activity is involved. So I take from that to mean that while you only want to give your name, rank, service number, if you're being tortured, you certainly that would be taken into account. Now, Article 6 points out that I will never forget that I am an American fighting for freedom, responsible for my actions and dedicated to the principles which made my country free. I will trust in my God and in the United States of America. Now, keeping the faith is critical to survival of an American in custody. Article 6 is designed to assist members of the armed forces to fulfill their responsibility and survive their captivity in honor. And I can tell you, when I was detained during wartime, my faith in the Most High Yahweh kept me and my spirits high. And it was a long time after my detention ended that I was able to get to some sort of normality. Now, what I want to do is give you 5 tips that kept my spirits high during the time I was detained. Number 1, my faith in the Most High God. That was something that was extremely important to me. Number 2, my training. At that point when I was detained, I had already spent approximately 20 years in the military. And it was my training throughout my military career that helped alleviate a lot of what I was going through. Certainly didn't stop the anxiety, but it certainly helped prepare me for what I was dealing with. Number 3, my detainees that were with me, we had great morale and we helped each other through a difficult time. Number 4, thoughts of family and friends certainly gave us and gave me energy to persevere through difficult times. And the number five bit or tip that I would give you if you become a prisoner of war or detained against your will is to keep your mind occupied. When I was detained, I would play little mind games where I would count or think about ideas. I would exercise as much as possible. And that allows you to release a lot of stress and tension. And you may not have a lot of room to exercise, but there's certainly enough room for you to move and stretch and do push-ups or sit-ups or something along those lines. So if you ever find yourself being a prisoner of war or detained, most of all, keep your faith in the Most High and know that He will never leave you. And if you can think of anything that you feel would be helpful to someone who becomes a prisoner of war, leave a comment down in the description box below and let us know. And with that, I wish you all blessings and blessings. Shalom.
Call on, call on, call on. Thomas Mengesha.
Be sure to ring the bell in order to be notified of new uploads on this channel. And also, comment, share, like, and subscribe. Allahim willing, new videos coming each week.
He will fight for your rights with all of his might. He's Mengesha.